Hello, ladies and gentlemen. All right, today we're going to touch base on our area and circumference of circles. Remember that circumference is just a fancy word in circles that tells us and stands for the perimeter of the circle. So you're going to need a calculator, definitely going to want a calculator. You're going to want that formula sheet where it has all the formulas so we can jot down area and circumference for circles, and then you're going to want something to write with. So let's go ahead and get started. So one of the first things we want to talk about is what a circle actually is. Now we know a circle is the set of all points equidistant from a center point. You know what a circle looks like, but can we remember the parts of a circle? So the parts of a circle that we need to make sure that we remember are, the first one would be a radius, and a radius is something that goes from the center of my circle to the outside of my circle. The next thing that I would want to make sure that I remembered would be something that cuts the circle in half. And if you remember this, which I'm pretty confident that most of you do, when it goes from edge to edge through the circle, this is what we call the diameter of the circle. So just knowing and understanding that a radius, there's actually two radii within a diameter. So a diameter again equals 2 radii, and that might be something that you might want to jot down, because if I give you the diameter, could you use that to help you find the area or the circumference? Because as we jump forward and we talk about these formulas for circumference of a circle and the area of a circle, we notice as we look back in our formula sheet that both of them use the radius. So in every given problem, we're going to want to make sure that we're either given the radius or the diameter so we can figure out the radius to help us solve the circumference of a circle or the area of a circle. So just as kind of a reminder here, the circumference of a circle, twinkle, twinkle, little star, circumference equals 2 pi r. So if you don't have that written down in your formula foldable, you're going to want to make sure you jot that down now. And then the area of a circle, A equals, hopefully you remembered this one, pi r squared. And we know it's squared because area is always squared, okay? So making sure that you understand the difference between the two here. Circumference again is the perimeter of our circle, so that's just the distance around. It should never be squared. So that's going to be your 2 pi r, and the area of a circle is what's inside the circle, all that area inside there. If we were to calculate that, then we would want to have square units, so area is going to be squared. All right, so in our first example here, it wants us to find the area of the circle, but it also wants us to find the circumference. So for starters, let's just jot down what both of those formulas are. So again, the area formula is pi r squared, and their circumference formula is 2 pi r. So we have a circle here with a diameter of 8 feet. So now you could draw yourself a circle if you wanted to and sketch in what the diameter was, so we know that the diameter is going to be 8 feet. Or you can just kind of visualize it and start your work right away. So again, in both of these, area and circumference, they're in terms of my radius. So I needed to figure out what my radius is here because I'm not given it directly. A couple slides ago, we talked about what the diameter is, and the diameter is across the middle, and it has actually 2 radii in it. So if I were to try and figure out what just the radius was, I could take the diameter and I could divide it by 2. So if we wanted another one, so radius equals diameter divided by 2. So if I were to take 8 and divide it by 2, my radius of this specific circle would be 4. So then all I have to do here is type in 4 for my radius. Area equals pi 4 squared. When you square the 4, you get 16 pi. Now you can leave it as 16 pi, or if you wanted to type it into your calculator, you could using the pi button, and you should get back 50.27 feet squared because it is area. Now circumference, on the other hand, again, all we're going to do is plug in for r. R is 4, so it looks like we're going to get 8 pi. Or when you type that into your calculator, you should get back the number 25.13 feet. And again, it's not squared because circumference is just the perimeter, it's the distance around. Area is the one that you will square. Now, for example 2, again, it wants us to find the area, which is pi r squared, and it wants us to find the circumference again, which is 2 pi r. So again, I'm just writing down those equations or those formulas because I know that's what I need to use. And in this example, nicely, they give us the radius. So r right off the bat is equaling 9 feet. This time it wants you to leave your answers in terms of pi. Instead of going all the way to the decimal, it's asking you specifically to leave it in terms of pi. So again, let's just start off by plugging in for what we know. So pi, r in this example is 9 squared. So 9 squared would be 81 pi. And again, it wants that answer in terms of pi, so we do 81 pi feet squared because we are talking about area. So as we jump in to do the circumference, then we do 2 pi, plug in your r, which is 9. 2 times 9 is 18 pi, and again, since we're leaving it in terms of pi, you can stop there and label it with feet. So again, a lot of what this is just kind of plugging in what you know and getting yourself a good answer here. So being able to use the calculator and maybe doing a little bit of mental math as we run through these would be pretty important here. All right, example 3. A circle has a circumference of 28 pi. We need to find the area. So again, we're going to need both equations again. So I'm just going to jot those down quickly. And the reason I know we need both is because I'm given the circumference. So I'm going to have to somehow manipulate this circumference formula with the circumference to help me find what I need for area. So again, when we see the area formula, it's in terms of radius. So in order to find the area, I need to know the radius. If you look at the circumference formula here, it does have radius involved. So if I know the circumference of the circle, hopefully I could work this out somehow to figure out the radius. So I'm going to use this c equals 2 pi r, and I'm going to plug in for what I know. I know the circumference already, so I know what the big C is. So I know that 28 pi is what my big C is. And I know that has to equal 2 pi r. And the reason I know that has to equal 2 pi r is because that's my formula for the circumference. So now again, if I can somehow solve for the radius, I can use that radius to help me find the area. Well, here radius, or the r, is the only unknown variable. So I'm just going to use my math skills to help me solve for r. So I'm going to divide both sides by 2 pi. Notice I have pi on top and pi on bottom, so they can cancel. And now I just have to take 28 divided by 2. That's some mental math I could do there. So 28 divided by 2 is going to give me 14. So it looks like I just found r to be 14. Well, now that I know the radius, I can use that radius and plug it directly into my area formula. So a equals pi, the radius we found was 14 squared. So when I square 14, I get back 196 pi. And when I type that into my calculator, using my pi button, I get 615.75 units squared. So again, you had to find the radius using the circumference before you could find the area. This is more of what you might see on the Aspire test or the ACT test. So example 4 looks a little bit different because now I don't have a full circle. It looks like I have exactly half of a circle. So my objective in this example is to find the perimeter of this shape. So again, it's not a full circle, it's part of a circle. So I have to use what I know to find the perimeter of a circle, but not a whole circle, just the half of a circle. So here we go. Perimeter of a circle we know is what we call the circumference. So if I could find the circumference of this circle, or semicircle is what a half circle is called, could I take the circumference, and since I'm not finding the whole circle, take that circumference and divide it by 2. Sure thing. So circumference again, twinkle twinkle little star, circumference equals 2 pi r. But again, we don't know the radius. We only know the diameter. But the radius is half of the diameter, so we could say that r is going to equal 2 feet. So when I use that in my circumference over here, I get 2 pi r, which is 2. So it looks like I get 4 pi, which I know that I'm going to have to half this, so I'm going to right away divide that by 2 because I have to take my circumference divided by 2 because I'm not talking about a whole circle, I'm talking about half a circle. So then I'm going to get 2 pi, and if I type that into my calculator, the circumference of just the half of this circle, so the perimeter of just this part of the circle, 2 times pi, if you plug that into your calculator using the pi button, you should get 6.28 feet. So I found the circumference, but I'm not quite done because it wants the perimeter of the shape. We have to account for this bottom part of our shape here. We know that this top rounded part, which is half of my circumference, that's 6.28. But I have to include this 4 feet on the bottom. So when I do 6.28 and I add 4, the perimeter of this shape should come out to be 10.28 feet. And again, I had to know the circumference formula to help me solve this. So if you had any questions as I was working through this, make sure you jotted those down or go back, rewatch it, and jot them down again so we can get those addressed when needed. All right, so the last example then that we're going to talk about today is what's given below. So how could you, in this example, find the radius of this circle? And also find the area, because it looks like since it's shaded, I'm trying to find the area. So if you notice, it looks like I do have a square inside that circle. And how did I know that it was a square? Well, because it looks like I have 8 and 8, and then across from there would be 8, and across from there would be 8. So I have a square. So then again, using our properties of a square, we know that all of these corners are going to be 90 degrees. But if I also knew that the diagonal of a square, remember that cuts those in half. So then this one would be 45 and this one would be 45. So if you think there, just with the prior knowledge we knew, we now created a 45, 45, 90. And if you remember the trick, the 45, 45, 90, we could find this. Now, why does that help me? Why does X in this picture help me find the area? Hopefully you realize that the X, even though it is the diagonal of the square, it's also the diameter of the circle. And if I can find the whole diameter, I can use that diameter then to find the radius, which I would need to find the area. Because area, again, is pi r squared. So if I were to remember the 45, 45, 90, I'd take leg, which is 8, times the square root of 2. So X would be 8 square roots of 2. That's the whole diameter again. And if I'm talking radius, I don't want the whole diameter. I just want from the center to the edge. So again, I take that diameter of 8 square roots of 2, and I want to divide that by 2. I can't divide the radical because that's underneath, but I can divide the 8 and the 2 on the outside here to get 4 root 2. So what that tells me is that my radius is 4 square roots of 2. And now I know I'm going a little fast here, but if you sat down and thought through this, I can guarantee that you'd somewhat come up with the same answer. Somehow you'd get to the same answer. I'm very, very confident. So now if I were to use 4 square roots of 2 up here in my area formula, because that is my radius, 4 square roots of 2 squared. So again, we'd have to square the 4 and square the square root of 2. So I'm going to get 4 times, again, the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 would give me the square root of 4, which the square root of 4 is 2. So looks like I would get pi times 8, or we could write that as 8 pi. So the area here is 8 pi, and if you were to take a second and type that into your calculator using the pi button, you would get back the number 25. So area would equal 25.13 units squared. And again, like I said, I kind of talked through that a little fast, but I didn't want to make this video too long. But if you sat down and thought about it, I'm just proving to you that this problem looks really scary, but you have all the tools in your toolbox to help you solve it. So make sure you understand that all of that previous stuff we learned, it continues to come back. So you have your notebooks, look through those, make sure you have all this important information, and jot down any questions you have, because then when we meet, we can talk about any questions you might have and make sure we get them answered. So I want to thank you for taking really, really good notes today. I will see you when I see you.